Welcome to NBA Jam. Tonight's matchup, Bulls versus...
Okay, we'll go back. Count again.
Going back. Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah. This takes you back, bro.
That's where we're going. We're going back. We're going back.
Cookies! Cookie Monster here. We got to have cookies now. So now we're going to make some real cookies.
Bet you weren't expecting
What?
that.
What? I did not expect that at all. You know what? I still love it. I
Yeah.
love it.
Okay.
Took a classic and made it your own.
That's
Thanks,
it.
Jess.
Well, we're going back because I want to start really personal here and take us back to, you know, when we were first introduced to Michael Jordan. So I think that's the best way for maybe other people. I want to speak in a way that people who love and appreciate basketball and Michael Jordan also, and people who have no idea about basketball can all get into this. So imagine you're 5, 6 years old. Your favorite character on Sesame Street is Cookie Monster. And, you know, why Cookie Monster? Not just because you love cookies. There's something awesome about Cookie Monster, and it's also about the character Animal, for example, in the Muppets, in that every time they come on screen, you know exactly how this scene is going to end, right? Like, there's no suspense at all about how the scene is going to end, yet you're so drawn to it. There's something so strange about this. It's like, it's the tension of just, you know he's going to eat those cookies. Like, no matter what else is going on, it doesn't matter. He's going to eat those cookies, and the question is just when and how.
How and how many and how aggressively.
Yeah, how
And so with
aggressively.
Animal, it's the drums.
Animal is
You know
the
he's gonna do
drums.
that?
Animal is it's like he's a jazz drummer or whatever, and it's like, and you just see him getting angrier and more frustrated, and the rage building up, and you know he's just gonna go nuts at some point. So like these characters, I was fascinated with these characters, and I thought about this recently, and I was like, yeah, there's something about that, just that tension that builds of knowing what's gonna happen, but then there's still this like thing, oh, is this gonna be the one episode that it doesn't happen? Like, is this gonna be? There's something weird about that tension. So when you graduate, as I did in 1991, from Sesame Street to being like a full-time sports-obsessed child, around the time that Michael Jordan is becoming this relentless victory machine, whereby there was no question that the Bulls were going to win. And it was just when and how. Like, sometimes they would have to take 6 games to do it. Or so, and there would always be this tension. Oh, is this the year that somebody's going to beat the Bulls? Like, and even though deep down you knew nobody was beating the Bulls. You know nobody was beating Michael Jordan, but there's, John Starks is playing really well. Oh, Patrick Ewing.
I thought the Knicks had it a few times, man.
Yeah.
And I'm hurt.
Yeah.
I hate that shit.
Yeah, but I think deep down some of us, just as soon as it would happen, as soon as Jordan would just go off in that game 6 and score 47 points and defend the other team's best player and destroy them, you would go, oh, well, of course that was going to happen. Of course Cookie Monster was going to eat the cookies.
Yeah.
And then later on, we discovered, as we became adults, that Michael Jordan isn't the Cookie Monster. He's Oscar the Grouch.
There we go. I like that, bro. I was like, where exactly are we going with this? But yeah, okay.
So
how is he Oscar the Grouch? Tell me about that.
I think, okay, I want to get into that. There's going to be a whole segment of this about Jordan as Oscar the Grouch and whether or not it's necessary to be Oscar the Grouch to be successful or to be a star. We're going to get into all these things. I just want to mention also that we're doing this just before the last 2 episodes of The Last Dance are released. So we've watched the first 8 episodes of this 10-part documentary that's coming out in the middle of a sports desert zone where nobody's allowed to play sports because of COVID, either professionally or recreationally. And so a lot of us are quenching that thirst with this documentary series. And so we don't know what happened in the last 2 episodes, but early on in this series, we find out that Michael Jordan, when asked like how long did it take him roughly to establish himself in the National Basketball Association, his answer was game number 3.
Couple of games.
It was game number 3, and then he actually like he remembers like the moment when it was just like a click, and he was like, no, like I'm gonna destroy this league. And so we did episode 3 last week, Billy, and I wanted to check in with you. Do you feel like we had that click? Do you feel like you were like, you know what, we got this?
Absolutely not. We're still working on it. I did you see the lines on my face going up and down? Did you hear the first like 6 minutes of my audio? You know, one thing I love is I love making mistakes though, because I know that is now a new piece of information, and the goal is to never make that mistake again. Mm-hmm. So absolutely not. But yes, I feel like we're rocking though. But Jordan's supreme confidence, he figured it out in three games. That's pretty sick.
I just want to go back to like what he was for us as kids. So I remember being on basketball teams where you were not allowed to wear jersey number 23. And one of my best friends, Corey, got benched repeatedly for sticking his tongue out while playing. Like just like dribbling the ball and being like, yeah,
really?
Because this was one of Michael Jordan's signature things, right? Yeah. This is part. It was stick your tongue out, and like this always hit me as.
Wait, hold on. Are you sure it was because of the tongue, or was he garbage?
No. He was one of our best players. He was one of our best players. Yeah.
Wow.
And and you know, coach wanted to make a statement, and I on a side note, because not being allowed to wear number 23, I took number 24. And then as soon as I physically had it in my hands, I told my coach that I took it because I'm one better than Jordan. And and then I went back to my spot on the bench. Like, which I was there not because of having said that. I was there because that's my rightful position on the team, you know. You know, 7th man, 8th man, somewhere around there. And coming off the bench, and anyways, I wanted to troll him a bit because I feel like there's part of me in there like that just saw this as kind of weird, kind of Christian inspired shit, you know, just kind of like don't compare yourself to our Lord, you know, and although I appreciate.
That is weird, man. That is weird. I've never played organized ball. I just played a lot of street ball.
Okay.
So numbers were never a factor, but I just remember the Iverson years, which is a little later. Everybody was emulating that. That's when the shorts started to get super long. Shorts started to, you know, go down to the ankles, and everybody's wearing sleeves and braids. And, you know, So I think it's funny.
And the crossover became the biggest thing. Like you could cross somebody over, which is you make your defender go one way and you pull them back the other way. Iverson was famous for that, and then that became like and End One mixtape was coming out. You
Absolutely.
know, it was.
And that was my lane because I've never had a jump shot. So
wasn't my
whole thing was quickness, speed, and tenacity, which we'll get into a bit, you know. So if I could get a crossover and pass it to Jesse for the oop, you know, that's really all I wanted.
Jordan was also a model for people who didn't have a good jump shot. Like, because Jordan is one of the first superstars, if not the first, to dedicate himself to becoming the best defender in the league as well. And so for those who aren't familiar with basketball, it's like defense is that thing you don't want to do. You know, defense can, in this case, can represent whatever the thing you do in life, whatever your profession is or your mission or your passion. It's like that part of it that you hate, you know, that just like has to be done, whether it be like updating the website or cleaning the dishes or whatever it is, you know.
You know, I could come from a football mindset on this because I know you're right. People didn't want to play defense, but I did. Again, probably because I just knew my place. I knew who I was. I knew what I brought to the team. I'm always very familiar with like what value am I bringing, and you weren't picking me because you wanted me to light up the scoreboard. I was a decent, you know, halfway decent point guard. I wouldn't get stolen a lot, but yeah, I played defense.
Yeah,
like Patrick Beverly, Gary Payton, those guys. That's what I wanted to be.
Right.
So, but yeah, if you were a stud,
or like Dennis Rodman would be the example on the Bulls, who was like, I'm going to become the best rebounder. Exactly. I'm going to study rebounding, which nobody did.
Yeah, he talks about like practicing and having people shoot and just noticing the spin on the balls with different different players. So that's totally my purview. The whole thing about not having decent defense or not playing defense among superstars, we're gonna get into ego a little bit, but that to me that's just like the pretty boys don't want to do defense, man. We get gritty in there though.
Yeah. And then, so I think we're gonna tap into some of this like inner Michael Jordan to try and get through these early days of starting a podcast, because there's a lot of shit to figure out, a lot of mistakes, and I just want like one last moment of childhood Michael Jordan moments is Space Jam. So
Space Jam, hell yeah,
man, I remember
love that movie.
I remember coming out of the theater Space Jam, and it was like something had moved, like the earth was a different place now. Like a whole new realm of possibilities had happened. It's like I remember coming out with my friend Brendan, and it was just like Michael Jordan can play on the same team as the Tasmanian Devil. You know what I mean? And the music, the soundtrack for Space Jam was out of this world.
Coolio, LL Cool J.
Nah, hit him high, hit him high, hit him high. You hit him.
Who else was on that?
I remember like at dances, we would all like play the roles of the different 5 MCs. So it was LL Cool J, Busta Rhymes, Be Real from Cypress Hill, Method Man, and Coolio. Yeah, Coolio, I think it's funny that you remembered Coolio first out of those 5. That's like for me, that's like the 5th one. You're like, who was the 5th? It's like, right, Coolio, yeah. But anyways, yeah. But I remember like, and there would be like 5 of us, and I was the only white guy, so I had to be real.
You had to be real.
And I remember being like, nah, I've got more of a Busta vibe. I'm kind of crazy, like, I'm not like coordinated enough to have a good jump shot. I'm that crazy defensive guy.
That's funny. No, that was crazy. The movie was nuts. I remember leaving the theater with a similar feel, and the soundtrack too was fantastic, man. Just got you real hype, and that cemented. I mean, he was already the face of the NBA, but he became, through a series of events, including Space Jam, just the face of a generation in sports.
The only film, so I was like 12 probably or 11. The only film I remember leaving with like a similar feeling of like the world's changed was a few years later. I think Space Jam was still my favorite movie when I walked into The Matrix.
I was Jesse, I swear to God, I was like, I'm gonna let Jesse finish, and then I'm gonna talk about The Matrix. But yeah, same. It was a real event. It was a cinematic event. You're like, oh, these things are possible now.
When that film ended with the Rage Against the Machine track, like Neo goes like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't know, and then it has this little monologue, and then ba-na-na, and this wake up, wake up. And I just remember just like being in the chair, like, I'm awake. Like I was asleep when I walked in here. I thought Space Jam was the greatest film of all time. I was super asleep, and I'm so awake right now,
Crazy.
I remember that.
That was an event.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so now we're up to the film of the moment, The Last Dance, and I want to get to the first clip here, which it gets into a bit of the roots of Michael Jordan's toughness. And my apologies to the people that worked so hard to make this film, that in these clips, in order to just get the content as tight as possible, I made cuts. Sometimes the music jumps, doesn't have the flow of the movie, and as a filmmaker myself, I just want to, my apologies,
My parents provided us with all the opportunities to succeed in life.
As a family, we were naturally tough. My father was tough, my mom was tough, and the environment they brought us in was a tough environment. You get knocked down, you got to get up.
Don't wait for somebody to give you something. You're strong, you're intelligent, go out and earn it and work for it.
At the time, you had racism all over North Carolina, all over, United States, and it was a lot of it around there. So as a kid, it was like, okay, this is where I don't want to be. I want to excel outside of this. So my motivation was to be something outside of Wilmington.
He did not make the varsity team as a sophomore.
When I got home and I told my mother I was cut, I was demoralized. I didn't want to play any more sports. I felt like, the coach didn't like me.
He was devastated. He came home upset, crying, and we both cried because I knew he wanted to really compete with the other guys. My words to him was, if you really wanted you work hard over the summer. And he did that summer. He focused. He would practice all day. That basketball never left his hand.
As far as I can tell, a lot of the motivation to succeed in the will to be anything close to Michael Jordan. I mean, Michael Jordan is in a different stratosphere, but to even accomplish anything, it requires some internal commitment, and it requires that you turn some of your stress and difficulties, turn those into tailwinds so you can move forward. And it sounds like that's what he did, and it manifests and warps and turns into something even greater in college and even greater in the pros. But that all makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, and I want to say just on a cultural level of the 90s, there's a moment in The Last Dance where Jerry Seinfeld comes to like visit Michael Jordan in the locker room, and it's kind of this meeting of the Titans, it's pitched as, right? Because the Seinfeld was the most popular show on television, and here's Michael Jordan, the most popular individual on planet Earth probably at the time. And it's the thing I love about it is that Jerry Seinfeld for me had a very terrible influence on people in the sense of like making whining cool. And I just meet people all the time that I feel like are doing bad Seinfeld impressions, complaining about like the tiniest little things and focusing on that and focusing all their attention on that. And Jordan represents the opposite of that. Jordan is like never ever going to admit anything bothers him. And
he admits something bothers him, but he's going to tell you he's going to transform it. Things bother him. He'll invent things to bother him.
That's true.
I feel like I don't want to do this too much, man, but I played high school in high school football and collegiate football at the Stony Brook University. And I don't want to do too much, personal reflection to all this, because there's no comparison. But I used to do a similar thing, make up things. But the question is how you respond to it. And yeah, in terms of these impersonations, I hate, like most people's Jerry Seinfeld is trash.
When you add all these kind of assets and qualities that Michael Jordan displayed up, along with, he can be, I will put this out there. I think when he has a script, he can be very charismatic. Off the cuff, he kind of comes across as a jerk. When he's kind of like left to do his own thing. He's got a great smile. And he, in many ways, was a great person to launch a new experiment, which is to have a player become a brand. And this is perhaps Michael Jordan's largest influence on the culture, is the degree to which he became a brand. And today he is the richest athlete on earth. Forbes has his net worth at $2.1 billion. Wow. 90 million of that was from salary. The other $2 billion is basically from lending his name and likeness to help other people sell shit.
The end of year 4, they hoped to sell $3 million worth of Air Jordans. In year 1, we sold $126 million.
I get paid when my record is played, to put it short. I got it made.
As a commodity, Michael Jordan is as hot as a Cabbage Patch doll right now. The endorsements are fast and furious. The photo sessions seem endless.
Before Michael Jordan, sneakers were just for playing basketball.
Part of that.
I started wearing my wristband. I got it on.
Nice.
Like right in the same spot where
that's
Michael.
Lakers purple?
This is Raptors purple.
It's
similar to Lakers purple, but it's definitely a Raptors purple. And
gotcha.
And so it's this is where he would wear his, and I would wear mine even when I wasn't playing ball. Like I would wear it all the time in that spot. It got so dirty. And then I was back visiting my mom a few years ago, and I found it, and I tried it on, and I swear to God, I felt power. Like I just like feeling it on that, and then I got some new ones, and sometimes I wear them now. But it was like a physical reminder of like my identity is hard work. And so the irony of the brand of Michael Jordan is that what's going on here is like one of the things that's most attractive about him is his work ethic, and then you're using that brand to sell these ridiculous shortcuts to being like Mike. Like the idea that you, by eating a hamburger, are somehow more like Mike than you were before you ate a hamburger is ridiculous, right? But that's what advertising is. And Michael Jordan, like, not him himself, it's all the people around him. It's all the people who made billions of dollars off of basically tricking us into thinking that this had something to do with Michael Jordan. And he kind of represents a new era almost in the history of capitalism, like in the sense of how much money he moved into some of these corporations, into McDonald's, into Coca-Cola, into Gatorade, into Nike, into Hanes, like underwear. Like, these are the underwear that like Michael Jordan wears. You know, it was ridiculous. Like, Saturday Night Live even did a skit at the time making fun of, like, with him when he was the host or whatever, like making fun of, like, where they did like a Michael Jordan tampon commercial, I think it was, or something. Like, they were just making fun about like he'll sell anything.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the order of the day today, right? You see athletes, you're like, what, Shaq? Why are you teamed up with the General on car insurance? You know, you got all that money from your NBA stuff. You've got TNT. You know, you're still making it. You know. And you're with the General, and also with like Icy Hot, and with those little bands, the copper stuff. And I respect it. Do what you need to do, but at the same time, I guess that wasn't a thing really before Jordan. And the complexity of what makes Jordan is complex. It's a lot. It's deep. It's the things that make Jordan who he was is a whole series, a web of challenges, and like challenges accepted and beaten and surpassed, and it's like inner will and drive, and you can't get that you can't sell that, and so they're gonna kind of push you towards the sneakers.
Exactly. And you saw how important he was to the NBA brand when when his career ends finally, and arguably one of definitely the top 2 or 3 best players in the league at the time, and the player who we talked about earlier who was getting a lot of attention was Allen Iverson. And Allen Iverson is like a pretty interesting contrast to Michael Jordan in terms of his style. Practice? Were you talking about practice?
Practice?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And also the way he dressed. Michael Jordan's from rural North Carolina, and Allen Iverson's from urban America, and a generation later.
It's a totally different approach, a totally different sensibility, and his approach. Yeah, he embodied what I was talking about earlier on the guys who wouldn't lace up their sneakers, the guys who would they come on the court, and the whole point was to show that I'm better, and I'm not even putting any effort in.
Right. And you saw how the NBA reacted, this is the era where they start to put in dress codes.
Dress codes, exactly.
They start to fine players for how they speak. The NBA basically comes in and goes, act like Jordan, or we're going to fine you. So one of the reasons why Jordan was so beloved too by these corporations was that Jordan is like uniquely in the history, I think, his allegiance to these brands was something that was like just wild. Like just absolutely wild. Like, he comes on the Letterman show before he wins his championships. I think this is like 1990 or something. He comes on the Letterman show, and his first thing he says to Dave is, "Dave, I have one question."
I got one thing to say.
Yeah, what's that?
I see Adidas shoes.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, now, we can't talk about this because the last time we started talking about shoes, there was a huge deal, and they had to run up to the legal department and wake up the attorneys. So we can't talk about shoes.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Patrick Ewing. He was wearing Adidas.
Now, I know you got a huge contract with the company. Put your feet down. Now, how much do you... No, stop that. Now, they won't let any of this on.
Okay.
Now, how much do you get paid just to wear these shoes?
A lot.
Wow. I had no clue about that.
Yeah. That's part of Michael Jordan. You know, that's like this incredible allegiance to these companies, and the same way that he was dedicated to winning for his team. He was on Team Nike. He was on Team Hanes underwear. He was on Team Gatorade, I guess. And they love that. And you see it affect other areas of his life. And here's one of them from...
Jesus. I mean, the way they lay out the stakes so clearly, the contrast between the two candidates. Jesse Helms, his name is legend. He's one of the first 15 people you think of, I think, in terms of historical racism in this country. And I remember this, and I remember that quote, and I remember it being, at some point people were saying it wasn't true, like it was like a rumor. And I wonder if there's audio. I guess there isn't, because if there was, there might be in this.
No, he admits to the quote. He says he said it as a joke when he was talking to, I think it was Pippin on the bus or something, and there was a reporter there who wrote it down. Okay. But he said, I'm not going to take it back either. And his whole statement there about, I'm not going to stand up and support somebody I don't know. Well, it's like, call him up. Like you're like one step away. You think a guy running for North Carolina senator is not going to pick up Michael Jordan's call? This is like the number, like this is the most important thing on his docket right now. Is probably getting Michael Jordan on board, and so like that's kind of bullshit. And then the idea of like, well, I'm not going to speak for him, but I will send him money. So it's like, oh, so you do support him, So like you do at some level agree that he should win, and this would be better for everybody if he won. And so,
but he won't lend the weight of his personality and
of his
risk
brand.
His brand, for sure.
Like the brand is above all. And
so here's what's difficult though, because I watched that and that kind of makes me sad, because we just came from talking about the Be Like Mike thing, and it extends further than just on the court. People today, I would think that, and LeBron is a continuation of this though. LeBron said several years back that one of his goals, apart from winning championships and all that, is to be the highest paid athlete ever. And we now have a culture that totally understands and rationalizes that and makes that cool and sexy. Like that's a legitimate goal.
Yeah.
And the goal of like standing up for these broader issues also exists, but it exists in a different space. And we don't have someone, we have plenty of examples. Obviously we have like Muhammad Ali, and we have Tommy Carlos. I'm sorry, those two gentlemen from the Olympics.
Yeah. Tommy Smith and John Carlos.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and all these other people, but
and in recent times, even LeBron James has stood up on a few issues. He's taken sides. Sure. It was interesting when the question of human rights in China came up, how quick he was to be like, this is totally irresponsible for us to be talking about China. And
this is totally, what did he say?
Irresponsible. I can't remember. He took a strong statement against the Rockets general manager, Daryl Morey, about like it's not our place to talk about what's going on in China, something along these lines. Jordan, similarly, like one of Jordan's legacies in terms of all these shoes he was selling is, so you can you can do this thing about like, listen, he will always say, I'm not an activist, I'm not a politician, this is not my thing, I dedicate myself to sports. And in some ways this is in line with what we talked about with Dave Chappelle last week of the criticism. It's like, you shouldn't need me to tell you this guy's the better senator. Like this should be obvious. They shouldn't hang on Michael Jordan. It's a shame it does, And so it's an interesting critique of our culture. But there are like serious issues that he is deeply involved in. Sweatshops, right? Like, his wealth. The reason like Stephon Marbury was able to sell those shoes for $15 because that's how much they cost to make, or less than that, right? Jordans are going for $250 or $200 or whatever, and they cost $10 to make. And why? Because there's sweatshops in China where people have horrible living conditions. So like he would never say a word about any of that stuff. There was whole campaigns to try and get him to speak out on that, the Students Against Sweatshops movement and all this stuff. He was totally silent on that stuff. McDonald's and factory farms, Coca-Cola and dead union leaders all over the world. There's total silence on all of these fronts, and that's kind of continued to today, and we take that as normal. And what did you think about Barack Obama's thing about, there's extra burden on African Americans to speak up politically that white athletes or other athletes don't have? And I agree with that, and I think that's a terrible thing. And I want to live in a world where Kevin Love and Steve Kerr and Dirk Nowitzki and the white athletes have the same pressure to go out and support the black Senate candidate who's running against Jesse Helms.
Yeah. Yes, I do want to live in that world as well. We're trying to remember Steve Nash. What did Steve Nash made a big public?
Steve Nash spoke out on the war in Iraq when he was
at the height of his career. When Steve Nash was Steve
MVP.
Nash.
MVP of the league.
MVP Steve Nash, hair flying, running around the court like a madman.
Yeah.
And he took the opportunity to say what he knew was right.
Yeah.
And I just think, I don't know if I've ever had a pair of Jordans, but I certainly wear Nike stuff. I certainly wear Air Jordan like shirts I've had, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's just an extra level of support and love I have for the athlete that is willing to take that risk.
Next in Jordan's life, you have this, everybody wants to be like Mike, but we know one thing humans love when somebody's up that high is they love to see them come down. That's the best part of the story sometimes, right? And or like the most interesting part. And Jordan's fall came in kind of like two hits. First, it was all this information leaking out that actually Michael Jordan's an asshole. You know, like there was they talk about in the film, the Stan Smith's book coming out with all these anecdotes of what it's like to be Michael Jordan's teammate. And we're going to get into that a little later. But then the big one was the gambling, is that this guy has a serious gambling addiction, or what he calls it, I have a competitiveness addiction. And it just takes the form of gambling. So a little bit just the facts of the matter. In 1991, I believe it is, he has to take the stand in a trial because there was a golf hustler, mafia linked, drug dealing linked guy named Slim Buller that Michael had played golf with. And when he was arrested, he had a check from Michael Jordan in his possession for $57,000 that from some golf gambling debt. He changed his story on that. First, he said it was a loan. And then he admitted that, no, it was a debt that he owed this guy. And then, you know, you have these stories like after he lost game 1 against the Knicks in 1993, back when Billy had these false hopes that Cookie Monster wasn't going to eat the cookies this time around after the Knicks took game 1. And then he was caught in Atlantic City the night before game 2 with his dad gambling until like 1 a.m. or whatever it was. And the next thing is 2 hours away from New York?
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, Atlantic City. Yeah, New Jersey, right there.
And you know, and then he came back and they lost game 2. So this information came out after they lost game 2. And so there's like a need to gamble here, it seems like. There's a guy who wrote a book called Richard Esquinas, who was a golfing friend of Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan denies this part. He says that Jordan lost $1.2 million gambling on golf in 1 week with him. And I know now we talk about Jordan as this guy who has $2.1 billion, but at this stage in his career, he didn't. He was actually considered an underpaid player at this stage. He was making, I forget what it was, like $3 million a year or something along those lines. And he had his endorsement, but you know, Nike at the beginning, it was $250,000 a year. At this point, he's definitely into the millions, but he's not a billionaire. Like going out and losing $1 million in a golf game is a hit.
Yeah.
And it's in this moment as this stuff's starting to come out that Michael Jordan's dad turns up murdered. Do you remember
that?
Do you remember this?
I do remember that. Yeah.
There's a
I remember being kind of shocked about it.
And so the story is that he pulled over. The official story is that he pulled over to have a nap, and these guys rolled up on him to rob him, and they ended up killing him. And then the car was found all smashed up, and yeah, it was like. And then they found the guys with 2 of Michael Jordan's world championship rings that I guess his dad maybe was wearing. There's a bunch of like strange circumstances around the murder, which in and of itself don't mean it didn't happen or that the official story is not true, but it's just like it adds to this story of something's fishy here. And so of all Michael Jordan has like tons of stats of like the only one in NBA history to do this, you know, the only one to get 50 points in 4 straight playoff games or whatever, stuff like this, right? Mm-hmm. One of the other records, and this is not proof, but it's just interesting to put out there, I think he's the only player whose dad was murdered like during the season, you know, it's like, or while he's there, which, you know, it's just, I'm just saying like the timing of like checks are being found, you know, in gangsters' pockets and stuff like this. And then there's stories that he's losing millions of dollars here and blah, blah, blah. And you can see
his saying that Michael Jordan contributed to the murder of his father somehow?
Absolutely not. Because I'm absolutely not saying that. There's no evidence, direct evidence of that. What I am saying is that if, let's say, I go up to heaven and they say, okay, there's different rooms here, and we've got this really great room, Jessica Alba's in it, and a lot of people you want to hang out with, Jimi Hendrix, but like
Alba?
the way to get, that was my, I'm in the 90s right now, or whatever it was, that was my crush, you know?
I'm with it.
And they're all in this room, but this room, the way to get into this room is you have to show you have good judgment. You have to show, that you can kind of like weigh things and blah, blah, blah. So simple question, do you think, if you have to guess, that like Michael Jordan's lifestyle and gambling and who he was hanging out with had something to do with the murder of his father? I'm voting yes. Like, and
yeah,
I don't know.
I gotta look at it, man. I missed this whole part. So does the documentary sort of imply this as well, or is that?
And this
is more.
This is where you have to mention something important about the documentary, and where it kind of represents Michael Jordan's power on display. Is that this footage? The documentary is based around really intimate footage of the Chicago Bulls' final season with Michael Jordan in 1998. That's why it's called The Last Dance. It's their last title run, and the film wasn't released for 20 years or more, 22 years, right? Because Michael Jordan has veto power on this thing being released. And he actually, something to know about this, about a little bit about his character, he made the call to the producers and said, okay, I'm down to do it. Do you know when he made that call? It was the day, it was 2016, and it was the day of the Cleveland Cavaliers parade for winning the championship, when LeBron James had arguably one of his best performances ever to defeat the Warriors, who were the team that had broken Jordan's own record for most wins in a season. And then LeBron, not single-handedly, but like if there is one of those moments where you go, okay, this might be the best player of all time. This is when LeBron really, people started going, you know what? There started to be voices around like Shannon Sharp or whatever saying, this is the dude. Like, this guy's better than Jordan. And Jordan just calls up and goes like, time to unleash the film. Let's fucking come over today. We're gonna do the interview. It's like, and anyways, so he has veto power. So there's a lot of power here, which means he has some control over the message, right? He's deeply involved in this film, and so obviously they can't make this film without talking about the fact that there was people talking about these rumors and his gambling problems and blah blah blah. But he's always getting the last word, and it's always ending up with like a musical montage about his perseverance, and that's how this one ends as well. And so it's as a filmmaker, there's a huge ethical question here. Like there's always the ethics of like the people that are appearing in the film, the people that are the subject of the film. What's your relationship like with them? And I feel like and the last word on this was that you have like Bob Costas and people like this coming on, friends of Jordan basically, who were commentators during the 90s, coming on and saying it was journalism's worst hour. All these completely, uncalled for, inappropriate suspicions being thrown out as questions. It was like, man, there was plenty of reasons for journalists to be throwing those questions out there and talking about it. And then Jordan goes on retirement, right? For almost 2 years.
3 years? 2 years? Okay.
Almost 2 years. Goes to play baseball and all this stuff.
Right.
David Stern was the commissioner at the time, and people suspected that this was David Stern kind of suspending Michael, but acknowledging that you can't be clear about this. You can't, this gambling scandal, especially if it involves his dad getting killed, are going to ruin the Jordan brand, the NBA brand, the Chicago Bulls brand. There's billions of dollars out here to be ruined right now. I'll just finish by saying that if the official story is true and Jordan is having to suffer through his father being murdered and then having people like me and others suspecting that he played a role, that doesn't mean he's responsible for the people who murdered his father are the people who murdered his father, right? And the people and if somebody else ordered it, that person's equally responsible. Michael Jordan doesn't have that level of responsibility, but he was definitely gambling with the mob, all this stuff, has some sense of what he was dealing with. and I don't know what percentage of the responsibility that is, but if the official story is true and if Michael Jordan is right, then I have an unbelievable amount of sympathy for that guy. And if I was him, I would also use my power to control the narrative around that story. I would also be like, you guys are irresponsible. Sure, we can acknowledge this controversy, but like, yeah, I want a musical montage about my perseverance after that because you guys have put me through fucking hell. That's one of the worst. Imagine your father being brutally murdered, and then
I couldn't even imagine that. Yeah.
And then you being blamed for it, as if you were the one that pulled the trigger. So yeah, we don't know the truth though.
Good job, Jess.
I also want to say another example of Michael Jordan's ridiculous power is that, and we're recording this before the final episodes of The Last Dance, where they'll get to his last shot as a Bull to win. It's this iconic shot to win the 1998 finals. Epic shot. Also, it was an offensive foul on Michael Jordan.
Sweep. You don't like the sweeping of the hand?
The full push off with full arm extension, throwing Byron Russell away from him so that he can get a wide open jump shot. Michael Jordan's power is so great that even when they showed that replay, okay, if you watch that shot again, when they show that replay, the commentators are watching this slow motion of Michael Jordan throwing Brian Russell off of him and taking the jump shot, and they actually say, Russell slips. Jordan pulls back.
With a quick crossover, look at Brian Russell slips, and Michael pulls up and buries the shot to give him a 1-point lead.
This is how powerful Michael Jordan is, and I'm super curious to see how this moment is going to be treated in this last episode of the film.
That's what power is, though. You know, at that time, these referees, there's always referee scandals for calling difficult things at difficult times and pivotal moments. Mm-hmm. No one's calling anything on Michael Jordan in that moment, especially on offense, you know?
Right.
Especially on offense. And after a shot like that, or during it, you know, everybody, the whistles are in their pockets.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. So let's get into another aspect of Michael Jordan, which I know is the thing you like most about him. And we're going to get into that, which is that he's a total asshole. And I find this so funny about Billy. That Billy's so attracted to this element of him, and Billy is not like that at all. And so
that's what thank you, Jesse.
He's like one of the nicest guys I know, who constantly defends the MJs and Kobes of the world for being assholes.
I don't think they were assholes, man. In this, I'm trying to parse out one element, or two or three elements. And
okay.
I think you're adding on another fourth and fifth.
Okay.
Which is part, but doesn't have to be part. Go ahead.
For the record, Billy Buntin, he's not an asshole. And now let's listen MJ's teammates describe him.
What Scotty was lacking was commitment, determination. I tried to get him to fight me a couple of times, in a good sense, you know, just to get him. Man, I'm tired of you picking on me. That type of mentality.
To the left, you dumbass.
People were afraid of him. We were his teammates and we were afraid of him. And there was just fear. The fear factor of MJ was so thick.
Yeah, let's not get it wrong. He was an asshole. He was a jerk. He crossed the line numerous times. But as time goes on and you think back about what he was actually trying to accomplish, you're like, yeah, he was a hell of a teammate.
We kind of needed that, you know what I'm saying? I needed him to be the bad guy, the tough guy.
His theory was, if you can't handle pressure from me, you're not going to be able to handle pressure of the NBA playoffs.
Was he a nice guy? It couldn't have been nice. With that kind of mentality he had, you can't be a nice guy.
Here we see the Michael Jordan that I'm pretty sure probably should have stuck to individual sports.
Oh my God.
Because it seems like everybody whose name isn't Michael Jordan constantly disappoints him. And he lets them know about it. Like maybe he should have done boxing or cross-country skiing or something.
Note what Pippen said. Note what I think Purdue said too, though. He made people better. Sometimes people need that. Not everyone needs that, though. But sometimes some people need that. Some people respond well to that. And I think I'm one of those people, man. I noticed something when I turned like 30. I realized that outside of sports, I never got growing up motivated in the same way. The motivation, the camaraderie, the fraternity, the support, aggressive accountability, you know? There's a long-term goal, we're a team, and the coaches, there was this methodical like system of documenting and assessing all the ways that I'm improving or not improving, my 40 times and my weight, and my technique, and we would all just push each other, and if somebody wasn't doing well on a certain day, we would tell them, like, let's go, let's get it together, and tomorrow you're expected to do better. And sometimes it would be just a conversation. Sometimes like your teammate would punch you in the chest and grab your face mask and talk to you aggressively. And there was just a strong social pressure for excellence and effort. Even if you couldn't achieve excellence, at least there was effort. That's huge, and that's what I'm seeing there. And if you're someone, some people don't respond well to that, and it looks like he didn't differentiate, but that was his style. And I'm kind of drawn to some of that, especially when the person doing it is Michael Jordan. But
that's the most important part. That is unbelievably important, because I don't know how many people, this is one of the stats of Michael Jordan we'll never know, is like how many people have been like abused and mistreated by human beings who were like in their management job or playing pickup basketball or whatever, who are like, I'm Michael Jordan, like I'm going to be like Michael Jordan. And it works maybe if you're Michael Jordan and you can actually you're actually the best player of all time at his time, for sure.
Right.
But then you also see there's other forms of leadership that have won lots of championships. And so since Michael Jordan, we can look at LeBron James, who has like a much more of a balanced attack when it comes to like, he is all love with his teammates, but like you said, there's a lot of tough love, but there's still the love. And with Michael Jordan, you don't see any sign of the love. You just get the tough love, if we can call it that. And then you have like players like Tim Duncan.
You don't see any sign of love, Jesse.
Where is it? Where's like Michael Jordan, like,
look at the championship, see him crying and hugging Scotty and hugging these very same guys, which is why Scotty says what he says, and when they're crying and there's like champagne all over them,
Not convinced. And then you can take players like Tim Duncan, who are just the nicest dudes ever, like don't raise their voice, win championships too. So it's definitely not, I think it agrees, you have to figure out the psychology of the people around you. If you're going to be a leader, that's one of the leadership qualities.
Exactly.
And Michael Jordan's apprenticeship program has been an abject failure. So like Michael, like in the film here, they talk about Scotty Burrell a lot. He was kind of the younger, talented, up and coming guy around, and Michael that's the guy he's talking about at the beginning of the clip. I tried to fight him a couple times, like get him going, whatever. Scotty Burrell's career went boom, down. Later on, when he's playing for the Washington Wizards and he's like co-owner and kind of managing the team, they draft Kwame Brown, who was considered the best prospect coming into the NBA. And Michael Jordan famously picks on Kwame Brown, the 18-year-old, every day.
I heard about this.
And actually develops a nickname for him as, and I guess I'll say it, the fucking faggot.
Really?
Yeah. That's what Michael Jordan would call Kwame Brown, which is shitty in all kinds of ways, right? Like, it's homophobic. It's, it's all kinds of things. But it's also like, you're also just devastating.
Yeah,
like this guy you're the best player in the history of the world.
Right.
And you're like using that. He's very aware of his power and aware of his voice and aware of his brand and stuff like this. And he's using that to just beat this guy down. And Kwame Brown had not a great career. He'll go down in history as one of the worst first overall draft picks ever. Not the worst, but down there. And it's hard to imagine. It's like it's an interesting thing of like, if he hadn't have had Jordan on his team, how would he have been better? Because he talks about how it fucked up his confidence.
It doesn't have to manifest that way. That is not something that I'm advocating. I never did that, and I don't think I would respond well to that. I'd never been called that. I've been called a lot of things, Actually, when it came to hazing and stuff, I used my humor a lot, man. I got away with a lot of murder. The seniors would let me get away because I would impersonate the coaches and shit like that.
I was same thing.
It's a great way to to get away from
humor. Gets you out of humor, breaks tension always, right? Like anytime somebody wants to do you harm or whatever, you can make them laugh. That's a good way to.
And as a leader, that was a big thing I used on the field. We had our enforcers, we had our aggressive guys. I was more of like, I would relieve tension in the fourth quarter. I'd like talk to people individually, and I knew who people were. I knew that some people wanted to be challenged aggressively, and you would get the best out of them. And there were other people, if you approach them that way, you are not going to get the best out of them. And I'm surprised to find that Jordan couldn't figure that out after so many years of being an athlete.
Well, I don't think he's empathetic. I don't think empathy is Jordan's greatest asset. And I think Jordan motivates himself through darkness and through his shadow side, if we'll call it that. And the person that he most brought along as his heir apparent was Kobe Bryant, and Kobe's similar, and I don't know the degree to which Jordan's influence made Kobe like this, but both of them famously motivate themselves through their shadow, and they also both of them famously don't have any friends.
And Kobe's another person that I love. So, I don't know what's up with my psychology here, but I want to.
I'm just saying, in this film. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to take. I want to take and crystallize, and build on the best parts of that stuff.
Right. I'm just saying, it might be hard to separate the things. Michael Jordan in the film, the guy who's his driver is also, it says, like personal assistant and best friend. So like his employee
is his best friend.
And Kobe Bryant once was asked, who's your best friend in the Lakers? And he said Derek Fisher. And Derek Fisher said, when asked about that, said,
I mean, I would say I have two compartments, one is, the basketball compartment, and then the other part is just, guys that you end up being closer to as, friends, or you hung out more, you went to dinner more. And, Kobe by far is my favorite teammate from a basketball perspective in terms of what we were able to accomplish. But, it would be a disservice to guys like, Devin George, Luke Walton, Horace Grant. I mean, guys that I really, got close to over the years in terms of, being friends, to automatically put Kobe at the top of that list. But
I feel like there's a connection here between the way these guys motivate themselves and their relationships with others.
Yeah.
But so I've got this clip. So Kobe, unlike Jordan, really took into his brand the philosophy of winning and really tried to build this whole thing. And then after he retired, he developed a production company and developed a whole vocabulary. He called it his muse cage.
Every muse cage is powered by two forces. Light musings.
You're nice.
Oh, thank you.
You're great.
Oh, so nice of you.
And dark musings.
Worthless. You're a failure.
Make it stop.
Yeah. Light musings make you feel good and happy.
Yeah.
Dark musings make you feel bad and angry.
Oh, I don't like dark musings.
Most people don't. But what they don't understand is that dark musings just may be our greatest source of energy and power.
Oh.
If you're looking for your inner beast, it's most likely living inside of a dark muse.
Really? I don't know. I don't like feeling bad and angry, but I do need to find my inner beast.
And so he develops this series of animations where he writes the scripts, pays for them all to get made, and then the voice is done by a 7-year-old, okay? And then these were played on ESPN for millions of kids.
Are you a competitor? Imagine you're Kawhi Leonard and you scored 40, leading your team in an epic come-from-behind victory in which you hit a game-winning fadeaway over your right shoulder at the buzzer. Your counterpart, meanwhile, was hot early but cooled off late, finishing with a tough 35. How do you feel about the game? Think about it. This game was embarrassing for him. Blowing that kind of lead has got to be a shot to his self-esteem. Now imagine that you held him to 15, no 10, no 5, no 0. How do you imagine he'd feel then? You could have crushed him, finished him, made it so he would never be a threat to you again. This could have been the game where you made him reconsider his decision to ever play basketball in the first place. Sound harsh? Need a hug? This Muse Cage isn't about comfort. It's about obsession. Obsession over dominating not just all aspects of the game, but dominating the will of your opponent. Obsessive competitors want it all. They have more and want whatever you have left. They want to humiliate you in front of your loved ones and make you consider lying to your family, telling them that there are no tickets available for the next game.
Jesus.
And now Billy Buntin to defend this for everyone, that this is a good thing for children all over the world to be watching.
That's pretty insane. That's pretty, to hear it from the little kid's voice. And I know they cast that kid. He or she has a particular voice, and it's so fun and kiddie. And at the same time, they're saying crush and destroy and embarrass and humiliate. And your parents won't come to the next game.
Yeah, that's the goal.
It's nuts.
Like winning's not enough. Winning's not enough. You have to absolutely embarrass your opponent. That's the drive that makes real greatness. Obsession.
The embarrassment thing is weird and off-putting, especially with that voice and knowing that that's supposed to be a kid's series. At the same time, going back to what I said earlier, that nowhere else other than in football was accountability so great and drive was so great, and the notion that whatever I am today, you worked really hard, but there's always another level. There's more levels. There's more levels. There's always someone staying late. There's always someone who woke up earlier, and that's your competitor. And I think that that's powerful. And I wouldn't be me today and have the experiences with football. But also, I try to apply those things to work, to my adult life, to animation. You know, I don't have a competitor. I try to say, yo, there's a version of me that got up and did that thing that you were supposed to do. And my job is to be that person. And that's huge. It's been really helpful for me in my career. And I think it's a value. I wish that this stuff could be applied more broadly, more consistently.
So you have a...
But I just want to separate. It's not the embarrassment of anyone. That's not the goal. I don't fully get that. I don't get that. It's not a goal for a 7-year-old. It's not a goal for anyone. It's about there's levels, and you are probably not at your peak. You know, you can do more. I think that's
so. You have a clip that's kind of like, I guess, the more positive side of this.
No, not necessarily. I wouldn't call this a more positive side, but I would say this is stuff that is similar, and at times when I was at my worst several years ago, or at my least, there were several reasons why I wasn't so happy. You go on YouTube, there are all these motivational people, and they put out content and have you think differently about yourself and the world. And I was drawn to this guy and videos like this one.
I remember praying one day. I'm out praying 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm talking to the Creator at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I ain't where I want to be. And I'm like, God, I ain't where I want to be. And he was like, you stop being a victim. That's why you ain't successful. You watching LeBron make his dreams become a reality. You're watching the Black Mamba make his dreams become reality. If you put the same time LeBron put in, and I started studying, and I realized as an African-American male, I need to get a master's degree and a PhD in order to do what I'm doing. And guess what? I had to get up even though it was hard, and I had to take ownership of my life, take ownership of my time, take ownership of my day. I don't run with people who count on me to put up 50 points. I run with people who put up 50 on their own. I put up 50, they put up, and we murder you. But look, Mike, that's why I respect Mike. If I can kill you, I'm killing you. I'm not giving you life. I'm not giving you no doggone game. I'm murdering you. If you can go in 4, you're going in 4. Mike ain't sweeping one team and then going 7 with another team. I'm sweeping everybody. Why? Because I'm putting up 50 every night. I'm not missing no free throws. I'm MJ. I ain't missing Jack. That's who I run with. My people don't miss assignments. You putting up 50 and your squad putting up 12. You don't stand a chance. We got that dog. So what? I'm the #1 motivational speaker in the world. Am I the #1 father in the world? My kids don't care nothing about YouTube. My wife don't care nothing about YouTube. So what? You're the #1 motivational speaker. Are you the #1 husband? When you come home, cut all that foolishness off and give me me.
So same mentality, same aggression, murder, this and that. Everything's a war zone. So there's a lot in there that we can kind of critique to a degree. But I love how he talks about applying it to life broadly, man. Like I said, the issue for me when I realized it, I never had that accountability in relation to math or schoolwork or being a good son or a good brother.
Right.
And I think if we can pull out that tenacity, that desire, that notion, the image of the perfect for you, whatever that means for you, the perfect basketball player, perfect husband, perfect business person, whatever, friend, do it, and just know that it's possible and that you can continue to get better. You have to think deeply about what that means, and then set out to do what it takes, and that it'll be difficult, and to kind of be ready for that. And so this was a huge appeal to me, and it's just struck me again that sports is where that comes from, and I just wonder for a long time why I couldn't be so motivated in other ways, in other important ways to be a full person, you know?
I think that the full person question is interesting because it's hard for me to imagine how you can have this total all-consuming drive in one area of your life and not have it affect other areas. So like when he says, I'm going to be the best motivational speaker in the history of YouTube or whatever he says, and I'm just going to like murder the competition. Well, I'm also going to be like the best father and the best husband. And it's like, so you're going to have more hours in the day than other people? Because at some level it's like there's huge prices to pay for becoming obsessed. Like this obsession with greatness comes at huge costs. And I don't believe it. I don't believe you can be the most successful person on YouTube and the best father and the best husband. I don't believe it. I don't buy it.
So it might not be the goal. It's we only have 24 hours and we all have a very limited well of energy. Some have more than others, but you can improve your personal well of energy. You can refine and take a serious look at how you use your 24 hours, and you'll find that you'll be able to probably squeeze another 2-3 hours out of the day by changing certain things in your sleeping habits and your eating habits and the ways you approach your day. And so,
and I agree with you with the accountability thing in sports, and sports being that place where you learn that you can overcome things, and you learn that work equals improvement, and all these important lessons, and to do so in a team, if you're in a team sport like you and I were. I'm just saying that I'll give you an example of people who, like I said, this stuff works if you're Kobe Bryant, if you're Michael Jordan to a certain degree. But like I was playing recreational basketball in a league here in Montreal recently, and there was a guy on my team who was unbelievably intense, and this happens a lot, right? But this guy was like really next level. Like I remember we were up by like 58 points, just destroying this team. We were just destroying this team, and they hit an open 3-pointer with like 1:20 left in the game, and he called a timeout to yell at us.
Oh yeah.
Like they cut the lead to like 55 with 1:20 left. The other team is just standing there staring at us like they want us all to just immediately die. And because they just want to go home. They're getting their asses kicked and they just want to go home. And this guy's giving us a lecture about never taking one play off. And I like stood up and walked away. I'm like, I am an adult. I don't have to deal with this shit. This is not why I come to play basketball on Tuesday nights. Like to get more problems when I'm winning. It's like to forget about my problems and focus on putting a ball in a hoop for a couple hours. And this guy comes over and grabs me and confronts me and is like, and Jordan was his thing. And I was like, what are you doing in college? He's like, Michael Jordan in the 1992 season was up by blah, blah, blah. And he called a timeout because I'm like, do I need to explain to you all the differences between this current situation that we're in and Michael Jordan, 1992, whatever the hell you're talking about? Like, first difference, Michael Jordan had bodyguards. Do you see those dudes over there? I might have to take the friggin' subway home with them, alone. Like after this, it's like, I don't know. The whole thing was crazy. And this guy, like I could tell a bunch of stories about this guy, but and people like him who live in like their own form of hell that they've created for themselves by trying to be like Mike.
Right. That's a funny story. You told me that once before, and it made me laugh. That is crazy. You're playing pickup basketball. One of the things we talked about this, when you're playing pickup basketball, the goal is to win, but it's also to be the kind of person that will be invited to the game next time, right?
Yeah.
So
that's the bigger game.
That's the bigger game, bigger than this current thing. Mm-hmm. So empathy is important. Recognition of what the stakes are, what's going on, being able to chill, being able to turn it off. What I think is important, what I think is valuable, is to have that lane. I was a personal trainer for 4 years, and during that time, I played football and all that stuff. You go to personal training, you're training the general population. You realize that some people can get to their 30s and have never sprinted like full speed 100 yards. They've never attempted it. They don't know what that feels like in their legs and in their. And so you're trying to show them how to do it. And I want to have that lane. I want to be able to turn that on. And mastery is to be able to turn it on, and not just turn it on to put a basketball in a hoop, but I love what E.T.'s saying, to consider what does it mean to figure out whatever your career goals are, but also to be a good friend, and to aggressively consider what's the best option we have at any moment, based on that goal, to be the good friend, the good husband, and to have that lane, But if you can't turn it off, then you'll be like that guy you're talking about, and that's not who I want to be. And so I try to be aware of that. I try to be around people who have the ability to like check me occasionally, But rarely do I need that, because I don't know. It's just I like that I have the lane though.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I guess if you had told me as a kid, like I would have given anything to be Michael Jordan as a kid. Mm-hmm. And as an adult, the more I read about Michael Jordan and see Michael Jordan, the more I'm so thankful that I'm not Michael Jordan. Yeah. This is like a very unhappy man, from what I can tell. I don't see much real joy in this dude. His Hall of Fame speech will go down in history as probably the worst Hall of Fame speech ever. He tries to start out doing the typical Hall of Fame speech, gratitude kind of thing, thanking the people that helped him get there. But then he ends up just listing his grudges, because these are the real things that motivated him. And they're still alive in him. Like there's this rapper named Ghost Poet who says, life is too short to store up grudges, and life is too long to make no plans. That's kind of the verse. But it's like, you see somebody who's holding all these grudges, despite all their success, they can't let go of these things. And he brought, speaking of getting cut from his high school team, like other people, I think, would look back on that and like laugh, right? And be like, I can't, and look at me now, it's so crazy, how ironic, or whatever. This guy brought Leroy Smith, the guy who was picked. I don't even know how he knows who the guy was picked over him. I guess because usually it's like the whole team's picked, you're not on the team, whatever. But he somehow has identified the guy that was picked over him to be on the team, and this guy's name is Leroy Smith, and he brought Leroy Smith to his Hall of Fame induction ceremony.
It's madness.
And basically did like a, "What's up now, dude? Like, where are you sitting? Where am I?" kind of thing. He hasn't been able to let go of that moment. He's living in hell.
That's insane. I'm really glad. So again, I have nothing, no comparisons. I think maybe it's because I've suffered enough losses that it's kind of like, I understand the benefit of being chill, and I am so not the grudge guy. I often forget things that occurred to me that were rough. But I'm thinking of MJ. He had that loss in high school. I'd say he wasn't picked for the team, and then just incredible success, winning championship with North Carolina, and then in the pros, and just being an icon and all that stuff. Space Jam. He knows, all he's seen is benefit of being that way. You know, when people think about MJ, I hate to compare him to Trump, but I think about people who a certain mindset is pathological, and you think about like how their lives have played out. They haven't had an example or a reason to consider another way of being. You know, it's just, this made me lots of money and gave me a lot of fame and success. And why else would I be any other way? Does that make sense?
Yes, but I think Jordan, for me, is a story of like the multiple definitions of success. And when you read, like, ESPN, when he turned 50, did a special on him where they followed him around for a week and wrote this story. And there's a moment in the story where where somebody shows up to his house wearing Adidas or something, like wearing non-Nike sneakers, and he yells at them to leave the house, and then calls up like a Nike rep and gets the guy to bring over Jordan sneakers and makes his friend put on Jordan sneakers. Like, this is like a real thing that happened, you know? And I'm just saying, is this like this guy's successful? You know, like, this is his work. Like, this is how he lives. Like, these are his priorities, and this is like the things that he, I don't know, that his reason for living.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like Mike. All right, Billy. Episode 4 in the books.
Episode 4 done. Jesse, thanks very much, man. I gotta figure out what 5 will be. I'm looking forward to it, bro.
Yeah. All right, much love.
Much love. Peace.
Cookies! Cookie Monster here.